Hello.
dogs are making my GPU
There
work.
we go. Now
My
you're
Yeah.
god.
Sorry we're
Okay,
late.
everyone.
No, you're in time for some.
Oh, that's a new music this year. I never heard this one.
Man,
I'm here. I'm finally here.
where's Syrupy?
Ah, nice fireworks. All right. Oh, zombie.
This song
Oh.
is so sad. Damn. This song is kinda s-
Oh, yeah, we gotta place this down.
Thank you.
How many bells do you have?
But everyone
Make a
gather
circle.
around.
Make a circle.
Yep.
Make a circle. Everyone gather around. I got a long story to tell y'all. All right, kids. Everyone sit down.
All right, kid.
This is
Okay,
called
sit
the-
down.
the-
Wait, no, that's my chair.
the beam. Okay, here you go. This is called the beaming rings of the altruistic golden expediter. A story of justice, community, and sticks. By Mr. Dan 1009 and copied by Husky 1268.
that is. No.
Long ago, in our magnificent world, where villagers happily traded, zombies mindlessly groaned, and the pigs hungrily snorted, life had its oddities, but it was simple. Until one day, when a new creature appeared, that being what we shall refer to as a human. At first, there was only a few, or even a handful of humans that appeared. By the end of the day, they first appeared. There were 10 in total. They were peaceful and confused. They didn't understand the world they now found themselves in, and were instinctively curious to understand more about how this world worked and functioned. Some of them started to learn how to use the wood from trees for their own benefit. A couple of them appeared to have chopped down trees with their own bare hands. The villagers were cautious of their odd strength. The pigs didn't care. After the humans started building a few houses, compared to the houses that the villagers lived in, these were simpler. When a few days had passed, some villagers built up the courage to get a closer peek at these odd new neighbors in their houses. That is when the villagers realized how different these humans were to them. They spoke a different language entirely. For a while, the villagers didn't see much of the humans. Often, they just saw them going in and out of their homes, and they often seemed to be heading towards the caves. The villagers never dared step into the dark caverns of their world, for instead they relied on their iron golem protectors to explore the secrets down below the earth. Over time, the humans would be seen heading back into the caves with better and better gear on their bodies and in their hands. By this point, the villagers were able to name 3 of the humans that had started living nearby. They had noticed that 2 of the humans stood out more than the rest. A seemingly male and female human, based off what the humans heard and could barely understand. The villagers concluded that the names of these humans were Steve and Alex, who appeared to be the leaders of the humans. Meanwhile, the rest of the humans followed the commands of Steve and Alex accordingly. While their leaders did always help out, they were still the ones giving out instructions. While the villagers did respect that cooperative form of leadership, they couldn't help but notice that one of the other humans also stood out, but not in the same way as the leaders did. There was one human that seemed to be the most efficient at, and the most happy to be chopping down the trees, whether with their bare hands or with an axe. At first, the villagers thought this human loved collecting wood for building and resource purposes, but the villagers quickly noticed this wasn't the case. For in reality, this human actually loved collecting the sticks that would fall from the trees after it was chopped down. This human seemed to enjoy collecting and creating piles of sticks. Although the villagers could never learn the name of this human to the best of their ability from hearing the humans talk, they decided to name the human Stanley by mixing some of the sounds from the name of the human's leaders together. The reason why the villagers would give such a name to this human in particular was because, unlike Steve and Alex, Stanley has actually tried socializing with the villagers on multiple occasions. While the most socializing that the villagers got from Steve and Alex was intimidating but curious stares from the distance. In contrast, Stanley first approached the villagers after the humans had been there for about 8 days, give or take. Stanley carefully approached the villagers with one of his piles of sticks in his arms. It seemed that Stanley had noticed that the villagers loved to trade with each other, so perhaps Stanley was trying to fit in. But the odd thing was that none of the villagers had actually witnessed Stanley approach with the sticks. So the villagers simply woke up the next morning to find a decent pile of sticks next to the village bell at the center of their village. In confusion, the villagers glanced around, curious to know why there was a pile of sticks that had been left there. And quickly, one of the villagers had spotted Stanley in the distance eagerly looking at them with what appeared to be an innocent grin on their face. As soon as Stanley noticed that the villagers had found his pile of sticks, and that Stanley was watching them, Stanley swiftly dashed out of there. Even though a pile of wooden sticks wasn't of much value to the villagers in their little trading economy, they had undeniably appreciated the gift from Stanley. They decided to show their appreciation for the sticks by picking them up and placing them around the center of the village, where a small podium for their village bell resided. After Stanley noticed the way the villagers delicately treated their stick donation, they had often come by frequently to add to the circle of sticks. Then, when a few more days went by, and over time became expected that every night or two Stanley would come by and add to the pile of sticks. Thankfully, due to how often Stanley increased the amount of sticks, they could only add a few at a time, so it would take a while till the pile of sticks got too big. But unfortunately, Steve did not like how Stanley was behaving. When he had discovered what Stanley was doing with the villagers, instead of focusing solely on their goals, Steve found all Stanley's leftover piles of sticks and burned them. The villagers didn't know why there was smoke coming from the humans' houses the next morning, or why the pile of sticks around the village bell stopped increasing. Days had gone by, and Stanley had seemed to cease going near the village, and there was no sign of Alex or Steve. But all the other humans alongside Stanley seemed to be repeatedly going into their homes and then back to the mines every so often. But then suddenly, for a while, he didn't come back. Days had gone by with no sign of the humans returning to their world up above. I'm going to turn down my music sound. Hold on. Thank you. Alright. Give me a sec. Okay. Alright. Here we go. For at least 3 days, the houses of the humans seemed abandoned. No sign of Stanley, Alex, or Steve, or any of the other helping humans. But as soon as the villagers started contemplating if they had died down in those caves, they returned. But strangely, they somehow seemed stronger than before. They weren't down in the caves on their last breaths like the villagers had almost thought they were. But instead, during that time doing whatever it was they were doing down there, they had that most of the humans had somehow actually improved their skills. Even Alex somehow seemed more serious and somewhat intimidating than before. The helping humans seemed to be stronger, and while Stanley did seem to be stronger, they did also seem to be a bit shaken up for some reason. Not only had the humans returned with some physical improvements, but also had gained new resources too. Although it seems that they had also lost a fellow human, whom the villagers assumed they had lost down there in the mines, deep down below. They didn't even remember what the human looked like. They just knew there was one less human than originally. As a tribute to the lost comrade the villagers barely knew, they decided to name them as Bert, a name that they decided to forever associate with a person you might forget, but will feel so much emotion when you finally see them again. The villagers had noticed a newly acquired abundance of what appeared to be a white crystal-like mineral, as well as a noticeably increased amount of gold. But the villagers also knew that Stanley seemed to have obtained a unique stick, some sort of unique fire-colored texture on it. And despite Stanley's history of love for sticks, they seem to be a bit emotionless when they fixated on this strange stick in their hands. Because what the villagers hadn't realized was that the village had gone through a portal to another dimension that the villagers had never known about. Shortly after the unexpected return of the humans, the villagers noticed that the humans now had obtained what seemed to be glowing bottles of some sort of liquid. Meanwhile, in the other dimension, the zombie piglins were in shock. Unbeknownst to the villagers, the humans had done quite a lot while in their other dimension. The humans had killed a bunch of what they saw as monsters in the other dimension, a dimension that we now call the Nether. What the humans had killed seemed to have some special properties to their body. This creature is what we call blazes. The blazes were floating heads attached to a small torso below it, with what appeared to be a bunch of floating sticks around its body. And for reasons still unknown, this creature is able to fly and float around at will. The humans had learned that by cooking some of its floating sticks that surrounded its body, the blaze, into bottles of water, gave an odd taste and a peculiar smell. But not only that, but by putting in certain materials and ingredients, it would give the water certain effects to a person when it was drunk. When the humans discovered this fantastic process, they began killing as many blazes to collect its seemingly magical floating sticks. This is why Stanley was so emotionally fixated on these fiery fixated sticks, for they were of organic origin. Since Stanley was so used to only attaining sticks by simply breaking down trees instead of fleshy organic creatures, it made sense why he felt that way. After the return of the humans, some of the villagers had also noticed that at night time they would drink some of these strange liquids, and the humans would seemingly become stronger at dealing with the zombies of the night and of the skeletons. But not only that, Steve and Alex seemed to be in new shiny blue gear. They started telling some of their helping humans to go scouting the nearby areas and reporting back. The villagers thought it was strange that the humans would seemingly walk around their village when scouting nearby. They wondered why the humans still avoided them, especially Stanley, but they held no suspicions on them specifically. What they did find suspicious, if not concerning, was how Stanley seemed to be looking out towards the village late at night, with what appeared to be concern on their face. Although unfortunately, their suspicions wouldn't go unanswered for long, because Steve and Alex were planning something. Early warning signs started after the villagers started noticing Stanley's concerning glances towards the village. Then it was that one or two of the villagers' iron golems started going missing, which especially wasn't good, since they weren't only for gathering resources, but also for protecting the villagers, which they are quite effective at doing. The last warning sign was the increase of trees surrounding the village that would appear overnight. Over time, originally the villagers thought that they were being environmentally friendly to the humans, but sadly, even if the villagers had learned what Steve and Alex were planning by the time all those trees were up, it probably would have been too late. Because the next night, all the villagers woke up in the night to the smell of fire and the sound of the golden bell ringing. The startled and confused villagers looked outside and saw their crops burning and some of their houses being ignited by the humans. Although the villagers were quickly noticed that the reason why the golden village bell was ringing was because of Stanley. For the villagers had noticed that a scared, panicked, but brave Stanley was frantically ringing their bell as if to warn the villagers. But there was no time to be thankful, since the villagers realized that all the other humans were approaching their base, and as they were firing upon their buildings with fire-lit arrows from their bows. Steve and Alex were at the front of the pack, leading the charge, and unfortunately, the villagers had no experience actually fighting anyone or anything in their whole lives. That's why they had built the iron golems to help defend them. And despite Alex and Steve's attempts to diminish their population secretly, the villagers still had a few more still with them. As the humans and with their leaders charging ahead, the iron golems quickly stepped in to attack. The iron golems smacked and bashed the oncoming attackers, launching a couple into the air, causing injuries upon the remainder of gravity to their bodies. There were 8 humans fighting against 3 iron golems. As the scared villagers and anxiety had filled Stanley, as they all watched in frozen anticipation. Steve and Alex quickly realized how much they underestimated the iron golems, because before they knew it, they had already lost 4 of their members, and had only killed 2 golems. Despite their efforts to step in and help the rest of their fellow humans, the iron golem was still focused on the remaining humans that weren't Alex or Steve, since they weren't close enough to initiate hostility from them. Then the iron golem swiftly killed the remaining helping humans. Feeling enraged upon seeing their comrades die at these metallic hands, Alex and Steve jumped towards the last 2 iron golems. One of the last 2 iron golems had already been pretty significantly injured, and due to their effective shiny blue gear, Steve and Alex swiftly killed it. As they started attacking the most healthy iron golem, some of the villagers realized something. They knew at this rate they were going to die at these tyrannical leaders. It perplexed them that these tyrants never even tried trading, talking, or even socializing with them, and instead chose to simply kill them off in case it ever be an issue. They thought the thought scared them, but what terrified them was the thought that not only would they die at the hands of these bloodthirsty humans, but that they would also die alongside the only human that ever cared for them. While the villagers cannot read the minds of humans, the way Alex and Steve stared at Stanley after they delivered the finishing blow on the last iron golem was anything but a friendly glare. The villagers held each other close. They feared the worst for their stick-loving comrade, and for the lives of their neighbors. Stanley sat on the ground with their back to the podium, the bell, with fear and terror in his eyes as Steve and Alex approached him. They had the full shiny blue armor on, while Stanley had nothing but a golden helmet on their head. It was clear to everyone watching that Stanley wasn't going to survive. As they kept walking closer, Alex and Steve both took out a bottle and drank the whole bottle with a grin on their faces. The villagers knew what this meant. Well, that means they were stronger, and that death was all but guaranteed for Stanley. But then something very strange happened. Suddenly, Steve fell to his knees as he held his chest close. Alex looked down at him with confusion, before suddenly falling over onto the ground. They were both visibly in pain. Then, as the villagers stood with their mouths agape, watching these once unstoppable, bloodlust-fueled leaders fall to their apparent defeat, the villagers looked over to Stanley, who was starting to smile weakly. The villagers then realized what had happened. While they don't understand how those drinks work, they could tell that Stanley must have messed with it. He had messed with their strange, powerful liquid to betray them instead of benefiting them. For this truth was clear to all that Stanley had defeated these evil humans. But as Steve and Alex started to succumb to their betrayal in their drinks, Steve, with an hate-filled expression on his face, he looked towards Stanley. Suddenly, Alex died next to Stanley, as her body went limp from the poison that they had unintentionally ingested. Seeing someone so important to him die before him filled him with even more rage. And before death could claim Steve's body and mind, Steve pulled out his bow, and with his last breath, he then shot Stanley right in their head, which killed him instantly. Then it was over. The only ones that remained were the villagers, the pigs that were oh so dumb they almost forgot they existed for a moment. As the villagers started getting out of their homes, it started to rain, which put out any of the remaining fires, as if the world itself knew they had just gone through enough already. All of the villagers approached the now dead body of Stanley, his corpse still below the bell that was still surrounded by all the sticks he lovingly gave to the villagers. But as they all stood there in peaceful silence and reflection, something strange happened. The bell rung. No one touched it, nothing hit it, nothing was near it. Then it happened again. It rung and rung. It rung 7 more times until it had rung 10 times in total. The villagers were shocked. They didn't know what to do, except one thing. They gently picked up Stanley's body and buried him under the bell. They did this to pay tribute to what he had did for them and how he treated them, for he was the only human that cared for them, that tolerated them. Years went by, and the villagers improved. They had taken all the stuff out of the humans' houses, started trading it with each other. Eventually, they realized that those weren't the last of the humans. There were still more of them out there. More years went by, and now, whenever a human appears, they always remember to be friendly and socialize with them first, because a good friend of theirs taught them that. Since then, every time you hear a bell ring 10 times, it means someone's watching over you, and they want nothing but peace in your life. So please, respect your neighbors and respect your bells. They can be more important than you think. But not only the true worshippers of this legacy, that the bells will never stop ringing the bell, almost as if they are trying to reach out to Stanley, to wherever they are now. Let's hope that Stanley is somewhere nice, and with a ton of sticks. The end.
That was Nello.
That was amazing.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm glad you all enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Yeah. Also, I'd like to thank Husky again because he was the one who was copy and pasting it into the book.